Alrighty, I recently just seen 28 Years Later, and I'm gonna give my brutally honest review about it. First and foremost, the only way I can talk about this movie is by spoiling it. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers related to this film or anything involved with the story beats, I would suggest clicking off now. This is going to be a spoiler filled review. If you don't care, you can stay around, listen to what I have to say. First and foremost, I remember having those memories of 28 Days Later with the whole insanely fast zombie kick, them being affected by the rage virus, zombies throwing up blood on people, them turning like very quickly in a nanosecond. It was amazing. All right, I love 28 Days Later for what it was. Weeks, not so much. I could barely remember that movie, but I do remember having fun in the watch party when I did watch it with my friends, and it was just a cool phenomenon to have this series where you have the downfall of Paris and you're seeing it right before our eyes, and you're seeing the downfall of other areas as well, and this whole zombie contagion infecting like everyone, so to speak, and it was kind of awesome back in the day when I watched it. I fucking really loved the first movie. And it had Cillian Murphy, and Cillian Murphy was cool. I think it was Scarecrow in Batman Begins, if I'm not too mistaken. He was Jonathan Crane. So just going back and seeing him in that movie, seeing Jim all just disheveled, and he doesn't know what's going on, and he's in the middle of the street. It's like trash everywhere. He's wearing like this little hospital jumpsuit, and just he goes into the church, and all these people are just fucking infected, and they just charge at him straight up like linebackers. It was one of those moments where I'm like, oh shit, the tension, the suspense is real. It's like the last man on earth, and they're capturing that moment, and that drew me into that movie a lot. With this one, it's obviously 28 years later into the future. They start off with a flashback of, in the beginning's amazing, by the way. I'm gonna start off with my pros. It's a flashback of a kid in like a church, and all these other kids are watching Teletubbies on the screen, and then you just hear like bashing at the door, and you don't know what the fuck's going on. Like someone's just bashing at the door constantly, and you think to yourself, oh, as a fan of this series, it has to be the affected. The adults go out, check out what's going on, the kids stay there, and then you hear screaming and hollering and crying, and then one of the affected comes in and a bunch of kids get murdered right there on the spot, setting up what appeared to be a very tonally fucked up film. That's what I was expecting at first when I saw that intro for the first time in history. I was like, oh shit, this child got like munched on. There's like blood on the TV everywhere. Everything's going crazy. It's pandemonium, and the pandemonium of the series is the one thing that I really like about it. So I thought they were gonna delve more into the chaos and nonsense and craziness that happened off mainland, on mainland for several years, and you do get some of that in this film, but the beginning is like really fucking amazing. Sets up these two characters going in this coming of age story where the boy has to hunt. He has to learn how to survive against infected, because if he doesn't, then who else is gonna teach him? And his father eventually says, it's time, you gotta go in there, you gotta get your rite of passage and kill one of the rage virus infected. And then it's like they're all over the place in the mainland. It's a small strip they gotta walk to. It's like this long strip where it's like a Stonehenge thing on the ground, and it does create some plot tension where they say, oh, the rising tide can come in and wash people ashore, we got to get back at a certain time. So that element I also did like, where it's on a timer. You can't just really walk on this strip to go back to your safe house and then you're automatically safe and that's it. And I figured that would come into the movie a little bit later when they're getting chased by Samson, which we're going to talk about next. They do introduce a new infected, which is this giant steroided freak. Like this big ass fucking tall zombie that looks like a mix of Bigfoot and Rob Zombie put together. I don't know how else to explain it, but this is the new alpha creature that's roaming around, and there's this like gnarly shot of him standing on top of a hill at nighttime, just like slumped over, and then you see the bats like all cycle around him, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like the moonlight and everything, he comes in like a rock star. And then he sees the two heroes trying to go back to their side of the mainland, and then he screams, and then they all run and charge towards him. And this guy's like a goddamn linebacker. He can't be stopped. They're shooting him with like 5 million arrows. He's tanking all of them in his body, right, until they hit the ballista with the flaming arrow, and then they knock him down. But the alpha zombie in this movie is a menace. They set him up with infrared cameras where he's like ripping off the head of a goddamn deer and putting it on a tree, and it's like a Mortal Kombat fatality. Like Sub-Zero just came into the building and ripped off someone's goddamn head. Just like, just he keeps doing it to like other people. It's funny as shit when it happens. He just grabs someone, rips their head off like nothing, a full-on signature fatality, spine rip. And you're just like, oh, when this guy comes in, he means business. He can't be stopped. He is the impenetrable wall in this film. And I really thought that added a layer of tension when Samson was around. It's like he can't be stopped, killed, whatever. But they do find ways to incapacitate Samson. One funny thing of this movie, though, that you will see a lot is there's a lot more nudity in this film than need be. You will see Samson just flexing out the 10-incher on people because that happened for every scene. I thought that was like really fucking weird. Like, what was the stylistic choice of having this zombie just walk around and it's like dong right there? I was like, what is going on in this film? This is definitely a weirder movie with the amalgamation of thematics and visuals and things they tried to go with here. And sometimes it will pay off for certain individuals, whether they like weirder themes or coming of age stories, and others not so much, which I'm going to talk about later. But you then get those questions involved because there's a scene later where it seems like Samson, does he really care about his own child? You know, there's an infected zombie later on in there. Would he just kill the child? Would he raise it? And there's so many lore implications of the zombies and the creatures and the rage virus infected becoming understanding and more aware and maybe having a bit of a familial tie when they get near each other. So it does raise some very intriguing questions, which I hope they go into detail a bit later, because this is a trilogy of films that's gonna come out. The gore, fantastic. If you want to see people get blown apart, shot, it's a nice slew of practical effects exhibited in this film. People torn apart, beaten, slashed, killed, shot. It's like explosions, all type of shit. I think they did a really great job, and this is done on new cell phone tech, because they had these like giant rigs of cell phones recording this movie. I think it's the first time they've done something like this, where they recorded the whole movie on some new form of iPhone, and it looks visually stunning. There's only one shot in this film that I did not like, and it's the one where it's the CGI deer. You know, when you see it when Spikey and his dad is walking towards the woods for the first time, they're hunting, and they see a flock of deer. You could tell they were fake. All right, you could just tell down the trail somebody just animated that at digital light and photography industry. It's just like a bunch of CGI deer just running down the goddamn hill, and that looked fake. But everything else involving the kills and the blood, I think you're really going to like that if you want pure zombie carnage. I like the characters in this movie as well. I thought that there was a cool idea making the kid the protagonist and then having the father be the stoic one. He knows all of the ropes, and eventually you find out his secrets. He's the asshole father, the lecher, the cheater, so to speak, who goes out of his way and has another dark side to him. I think they also kind of imply that he was abusive a bit towards his wife. I don't know whether physically or verbally, but I know the film kind of alluded. Yeah, he doesn't really give too much of a shit about her feelings, which Spikey calls him out on. And I like the shifting character dynamics. I can't wait to see. The main thing about this movie and the new characters is I can't wait to see how they interact with the older characters from 28 days later and maybe 28 weeks later, and then find out how they mingle and correlate with other older survivors who've been in this world for the longest time now, maybe even more than those people. There's more of a human element to the story as well, and a lot of character drama, which I did not expect them to go for. I thought it was going to be 100% all carnage candy, but you do get those moments where the film really softens and slows down in the middle and the end of the movie, and you find out more about Spikey's motivations and how he wants to save his mom, because she has some unknown illness and they don't know what's happening with her, and then you find out later it's kind of cancer, right? It's all inevitable death at the end. In order to, you know, go through all this hardship or whatever, you have to realize that maybe your loved ones will die, not in a primal sense of a death where they're getting torn apart by affected, but from natural causes. And they also explore those elements as well of human relatability and the idea that you might have to let go of what you once loved. And I thought that was a poignant message, really. The whole feeling of self-sacrifice and that you might not be able to come back on any journey to the mainland also kind of hit a little bit as well, and I was really feeling that in the theater. I thought that was really great. The witch doctor character, though, I guess he's kind of cool in a sense. I thought for a second this will go into my mixed category, but I started to realize how much I did like Kilson, who was this subverted character. You originally think, from what Jamie is saying, that, oh, there's this doctor that might be a little bit crazy up there. You see this fire, right? He's represented by this fire in this bone temple, and nobody has ever went all the way up there. They fear they might get killed. They fear they might get dissected. And the doctor is the only one who could possibly check into the mother's illness, because she's going crazy more and more and more as time develops. I thought it was like some weird form of, maybe she might be infected with the rage virus. Maybe there's a mix of that and dementia at the same time, but no, it's just cancer. But it does appear to be like dementia related a little bit as we progress. It's just weird. She starts spazzing out or whatever, and they have to find out what's going on. And Kilson may be the one that could find a cure, and that's Spikey's journey throughout the second half of the movie. And I thought Kilson was fine. For what he was fine. He was the one that was providing the context to what was going on, the updates on the situation, and then having that moment where it's like, we have to put her, you know, out of her misery because she's dying, right? So the best thing to do is to, you know, do the blow dart. So and do the blow dart, and then, you know, make sure she doesn't feel it, and then eventually they burn her skull, and then Spikey, you know, takes the body, the skull or whatever, to the top of the bone temple, because they use that as a ceremony for the dead or the people that have perished at this place. And I would assume that this is going to become vital later in the sequel, aptly named 28 years later, the Bone Temple. And they had this beautiful moment of him putting his mother's skull on the top, and it does feel like this movie really wants to toy with the emotions a lot more, make the deaths hit a bit harder and have them linger, which is why they implemented that scene. So yes, I think the doctor was pretty cool. I thought he was gonna die though, because when Samson had his fucking head in the vice grip, I was like, that's coming off no problem, sir. You're gonna be fatality'd. You're gonna be like if Dawson transferred from Street Fighter to Mortal Kombat, all right? I thought he was gonna pull off Kilson's fucking head, but he didn't. And I was like, okay, he saved his life, yeah. And I guess we can move a little bit into the mixed category, because I did think it was very convenient each time the doctor had these blow darts and he would hit Samson with them, and then he would be like stunned or whatever. And it was like, oh, like you're basically, now this is the only way you can stop the alpha force, the alpha zombie within the movie. And I thought that was a bit of a plot convenience. I thought that was a bit of the only way to stop him is hitting him with blow darts. This is kind of like, I thought it was kind of lame, but I get it at the same time. I was mixed on the lack of Jamie's character, the father, and he was cool going into the woods and saying, you know, I know all the ropes and shit. I'm gonna teach you, having all these like bows and arrows, hitting headshots, hitting people in their carotid artery, and saying, this is how you have to hit them. Hit them in the heart, hit them in the neck, hit them in the head, and then they'll be done. You'll just be wasting arrows if you hit them anywhere else. And having that survivalist elements and having that character in there worked well, since Jim is not in this movie, so you needed someone else to convey this. And you would figure, hey, 20 years later, isolated from the mainland, someone would have to sharpen up their craft. I also like how these civilians as well, they will not let anyone the fuck in. If they see your eyes transform to red, they're gonna do an eye check and be like, okay, you're not getting in until we actually see those fucking hues. And I also like that element as well of the movie, where these survivalists are capable people. They know exactly what's going on in the world, and it does lend credence to them being self-aware. But yeah, I really liked Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, and I wanted to see more of him despite that initial prologue where he's kind of cool and awesome and well reserved, and I thought he was great. But you don't see a lot of him after the whole lecherous scene where he's like cheating and trying to eat someone out, and then he gets caught. It's like you don't see no more of the character after that. You would figure he would go after his son once the wife and the son go missing, but you don't get that revealed to the end of the movie where he finds out and he sees the baby Isla or whatever. But I guess you could say that they had some sort of domestic fallout, or he didn't know that they snuck out, or maybe there was a short lapse of time. I don't know. It could make sense in a way, but I think a scene of him gearing up and going after them somewhere in the mid of the movie, and you see him surviving, using his skills, meeting other survivors, I think that would have added to the plot a lot more than excluding the guy out. But again, this is a trilogy, so I assume that's going to be reserved for the later sequels. There's a character they introduced named Eric, and he is a Swedish soldier. He was plugged into the modern world. They had a joke where he had a cell phone, and they didn't know what that was. Well, what was a cell phone? And that was a pretty cute scene of him showing a wallpaper of his girlfriend, and he said, look, this is what I'm coming home to after I'm done with this mission. And then they make fun of her. I think Spikey does, where he says, she looks kind of weird, like maybe she has like a little bit of Botox going on to her or something. She just doesn't look like a normal person. And Eric is obviously gonna defend his girlfriend no matter what, saying, oh no, she's fine, everything is fine with her. I don't understand why people are making fun of this. And it was just a funny scene. He added a bit of comedy, a lot of levity to the film in a way I really wanted them to keep maintaining. And then you find out later on, and this is why I'm mixed about this, because I like the Swedish soldier and he was cool, but he was also erratic, and he was like, yo, we can't have this woman on this bus, this affected woman who is pregnant, giving birth to a possible infected baby. And they were quarreling, and it's like, you don't know that, we don't know that, or we do know this, she's totally fine, she does not look like she's infected by the rage virus. But I understand him taking those chances and saying, if you decide to take this baby with us, I'm gonna have to shoot you both, because I don't wanna get infected. I don't want to get bit by an infant. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is not Bride of Chucky at the end where the fucking baby just bites off the doctor's face, right? Just see that shit. I was like, that shit was crazy. And then he gets killed by Samson in 3 seconds, and he just served as fodder. You had a cool character, they put them into a desperate situation where he was thinking about himself, and reasonably so, and then you kill him off in 3 seconds. I think that would have been done a little bit better if they didn't do that, or if they let it play out, or if they let the scene marinate, so to speak, and just have this survivor stay around for a bit until near the end of the movie. Because one of my criticisms later on is that it should have been more introduced survivors who were different people, and we could see them go out in different ways or see them live in different ways. And While you do see some of that, you don't see a lot of it, which was a little bit disappointing. It could have been a little bit better in that regard. Going down the list, the zombie pregnancy scene. This is weird. All right, I'm not gonna lie. This is kind of strange. They run into, I think it's somewhere in the middle of the film, they run into a bus where there's an infected woman, and she is visibly pregnant, giving birth to a baby. And the first thing I assumed was, yeah, this baby's gonna come out with the blood all over it, maybe swallow the blood. Then the doctor explains later, oh, the placenta protected the baby from being infected by the rage virus. I just put this scene in my mixed category. It's a thing where I was sitting on it for 20 straight minutes deciding what the fuck is going on. It's just like there's an infected pregnant woman on the bus. I guess somehow the animalistic instincts will slim down when the mother said, oh no, don't shoot her, we're going to try to have this seance of holding her hands, even though it's an infected being that will bite the shit out of you crazily and you'll become an infected. They took their chance on this particular entity, and the infected woman sits down, holds the other human's hands as she's birthing this baby, which they don't know if it's infected or not. And then they take the baby and say it's not infected. So somehow they say, oh, she's not one of the rage virus. They do explain later it's because the placenta protected the baby from transfused blood, and that's why she is not one of them, so to speak. Therefore, she had a perfectly human baby, and the infected complied to the situation, as opposed to being a pregnant being and biting the side of her fucking neck and not even caring. There is some sense of human compassion, morality, understanding within these creatures. I thought this scene was confusing as fuck, really. It just seemed like they wanted to put in something beautiful or have this baby lead to other films. My guesstimation and my theories was that maybe they're gonna lead to some cure situation, which I hope they don't do, because that would be dumb. It's like, oh, we have the one blood survivor who can't get infected. I would thoroughly believe it 100%. I bet, like, if they go down this route, then that would be the perfect character to utilize in that situation. I hope not. I want this world to stay fucked and post-apocalyptic and just get worse and worse and worse, even if people adapt. And then you had the coolest character get killed, like, well, at least one of them get killed 3 seconds later. I don't know, bro. This shit was weird. They should have just went into a deeper detail of the very infected ass individuals as opposed to this baby scene, and you do see that Samson does care, and I guess that part does make a little sense. I'm still mixed on it. When I saw it, I was just thinking to myself, a big WTF, what's going on in this scene? What are they trying to convey with this new child? And I don't think it landed for me in terms of some type of scene with sustainability and substance. It's just a setup later on for a child that probably is going to be some progenitor of the virus. We don't know. Moving on. I did like the general lore building of the film. I thought that was interesting for when it worked for me, but the boon of this movie is that it takes place on the mainland, and it's a sequel. You'll start asking about other viral outbreaks or other flashbacks or what happened to other characters from the previous films, and I alluded to this earlier. You'll be asking, where is Cillian Murphy? Where's Jim? Where is the woman that was with Jim, the African-American woman, or not African-American, but you know, the black woman that was with him in 28 days later, and she was like one of the protagonists, right? I forget her name. I'm sorry if it's blanking on me, but I just forget her name. I know she's with him, and where's those survivors in particular? Where's the ones from previous movies? Where's the outbreaks from the previously established lore? You know, the downfall of Paris, all that other stuff that happened years and years, culminating years and years later. And you don't get those questions answered or even alluded to, I believe, in this film. You do get tidbits of what's going on in the world, but you don't get like full on complete answers, because the structure of the movie is we are a trilogy of films. Therefore, we're gonna have to do whatever spontaneous heavy lifting we have to do that might be offshore for a while from the other movies, and we're not going to explain most of that here or even tease it, so to speak. And I thought that was a bit disappointing. I get that they wanted to be focal to this story, but I think a little bit of a tease should have been in order, which leads to the ending and how I feel mixed about it. The plot tissue from the previous films is a bit disjointed, and you don't get all the answers from this movie. Moving into the ending, there would have been a perfect opportunity to introduce that legacy character, but they didn't do it. Instead, you get Spikey getting cornered by a lot of infected. He tells his father, hey, don't come searching for me, I'll come back on my own accord. He leaves the baby at the safe house right on the door, so the baby is safe. Then he gets cornered, and this further scene, as my brain like crunches itself like a calculator, comprehending what is going on, you see someone do a backflip near an infected. A couple of guys come out. They're all guys and girls too. They're all wearing tracksuits and blonde wigs and blonde hair, and they all are heavily armed to the teeth. And then they just start completely mollywopping this set of infected by doing backflips, by taking out fiber wire like Agent 47, choking them, ripping their heads off, kicking them, doing martial arts moves. I'm like, what the what the fuck is happening at this point in the movie? They turned the infected of the rage virus into a complete joke at this point, and that's what I was feeling when I was seeing this scene. It's funny. That's why I feel mixed about it. If you want a comedy gold ending, 10 out of 10 complete cheese, something that feels like it came straight out of Shaun of the Dead, maybe you will like this ending more than others. But if you are someone that wanted a serious dour moment of impact and substance, and something that didn't feel like a post-credits setup to another film, you will be thoroughly disappointed with the whole Jimmy Crystal gang and the cult being introduced. They do give hints of lore saying these guys might be unstable, and they kind of threaten Spikey a little bit. Oh, if you got any blood in your eye, you better watch out. That was a veiled threat. I don't care what anyone says. They were saying, look, we've been killing these zombies for the longest time. If you get a hint of blood on you that drips in your mouth or your eyeball, we're gonna fucking do parkour and kill you just like the rest of these people. Which I did like that part a little bit. I liked how they're very self-aware and conscious to their environment and what's going on with this cult. And you find out Jimmy Crystal is one of the blonde kids that was in the beginning of the intro as all those infected mobbed in, and he ran out, and he was the sole survivor of that, as his father, the priest, gets munched on by other rage virus infectants. And you see him wielding the same golden cross that his father gave him or whatever. Just he seems like a very religious man, or he has those ingrained into his personality. Therefore, the second movie is going to be Spikey being taken by them. Eventually they will probably turn on him, and he's going to be indoctrinated into this sect. And I know for a fact, I just see it coming. 28 years later, the Bone Temple, they are going to make the fucking joke that here is the cultist guy, Jimmy Crystal, and here is the legacy survivor, Jim. We have the same sort of name, right? Or they may know him to some degree. They're gonna make a joke about that. And I think I'm not going to like it too much. I'm not gonna like that aspect of it, but maybe Jim just shows up and kills all of them. I don't know how they're gonna introduce him at this rate. It just leaves you guessing. They probably wanted to throw this in as a red herring. It didn't fully pay off for me. However, the side of my funny bone that's sort of breaking the ground right now, that side is laughing at this ending and what it does. It could have been a lot more emotional. At this point, it would have been pertinent if Jim showed up and helped Spikey, even if it would have been cliche, if he would have done the whole Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator 2 thing where he says, Sarah Connor, come with me if you want to live. That still would have been a better ending than what we would have gotten, and it would have teased the next movie in a more perfect flow, in my opinion. And then you could have introduced the cultists in a different way where they're not so ridiculous. They're watching them on a hill and you see them in these ridiculous tracksuits or whatever. They drag out a zombie ripped off his head. You can see they're capable, and then it's like, well, fellas, I think we found our next slew of people to introduce into the cult. I don't care how you would have made that scene, it would have been leagues better than what we would have gotten. Now I'm gonna focus on my cons real quick. I know I've been gabbing on and on in this video. They're gonna be brief. It did feel like there was a big lack of horror in this movie compared to 28 Days Later. That is a undeniable fact. There is tense moments. There is moments where you might feel a character may perish. However, it doesn't feel like this movie has that cool and unique looking doomsday feel that was in the first movie, where it feels devoid of life until people come out that looks like they are insane, crazy track stars, right, running towards you. And that doesn't seem prevalent in this movie. The visceral tension of 28 Days Later feels removed as you go into the second half, where it's just Spikey and his mom and they're surviving all these situations and elements, and you have this one woman that's crazy. You figure she's not a survivalist. They could have done a little bit more with that, as opposed to maybe just one notion where maybe it looks like she might have been infected or got infected or something like that, and then they don't play up on it any more than that, which is disappointing. Someone on the subreddit said it feels like these characters have more plot armor than need be, which I can kind of resonate with that. Even though Jim turns into a super soldier at the end of Days and starts killing the fuck out of everyone, these soldiers everywhere getting a drop on them, it turns into Metal Gear Solid. But yeah, I wish there was a lot more tension. It's a far cry better than 28 Weeks, but it just lacked that visceral impact and suspense of 28 Days Later. They needed to show more survivors. I echoed this in my mixed category, but it just feels like there's a couple of people they run into and that's it, and I could count them on one hand alone, as opposed to the bunch of survivors they ran into in the first movie. I think that would have introduced more personality and character and added growth, and there would have been people that would have gotten infected. That would have added extra tension to the movie as well, which once again correlates to the previous point. Everyone else just feels like father to the alpha, and they fall to him very, very easily, and that's about it. They don't really explore other characters outside of the core people, which is Spikey, his dad, his mom, and then you may get a little bit from Kilson, and you may get a little bit from Eric, and he doesn't last long, and that's it. The back half of the movie and the subplot of the mother having cancer and going on this journey, I felt like at that point the film had a hard time picking itself up off the ground in terms of pacing, and that's where most people say the intro is amazing, but the rest of the end of the movie starts to deflate as you get to that part. Her death was, you know, it was saddening, really. It was emotional. They did well on that, but everything else going to that point and going on this journey just didn't feel substantial in my personal opinion. overall, what would I rate this movie? This movie is a borderline 6.8 out of 10. It's not the worst film I've ever seen. It's bordering between a 6.8 and a 7. It's definitely enjoyable in my personal experience. I thought it was worth watching for sure, but there is flaws in this film, which I definitely do not agree with the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes, where they gave this like a 95, a 9. No, like a masterpiece level. No, I do not think this movie is a masterpiece. I think this movie has a lot of flaws stuffed in when you get to the second half and the third half and the ending of this film. Although it does have entertaining merits, good build up, good characterization, but you're going to be left wanting more because of the sequel format. Therefore, it feels like pieces of this movie is intentionally missing to set up the final two movies that is going to come out. One of them is going to come out next year with Bone Temple, and the other one is probably going to come out a year later. I'm glad that the movie did well enough, though, to commission what is going to be thrusted into those questions of, oh, you finally get Jim, right? You finally get the survivors that were with him. You finally get other survivors, other infected may show up. You finally get the alpha sticking around because they didn't kill it. So the coolest part of the movie, the alpha hunting people, I want to see Jim fight the alpha, right? That's going to eventually happen. That has to happen in the next iterations, and hopefully them killing the alpha or the alpha just killing and wiping out other people is going to be insane, right? I want to see how that's going to go. But this is a movie that's part of a piece, and because you don't have the full puzzle and it's not gratifying enough on its own merit with that ending to be like, oh shit, it leaves me shocked and wanting more, it just left on a comedy note. I have to say that this movie definitely is not a 9. It's not a 9 at all. It's a hot 6.8 to me, bordering on a 7. Maybe I have to do a rewatch. Will it be bumped up or stay at the same rate? I do not know, but a 6.8 sounds like plausible for this movie in terms of, it's just a lot of weird direction and some weird things with the tonality. It could have been a darker story like throughout the whole thing, and you could have excluded that comedy bit at the end. It's just, I don't know, but enjoyable. I had fun with it. I don't think this is worse than Weeks. Definitely not better than 28 Days Later, that's for sure. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this movie review of 28 Years Later. I'm Renegade Operative. I am signing out. I had a lot of fun making this, and the next movie review is Sinners. I will see you guys next time. Later.